Here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Dave Brennan, and I'm the Marketing Director here for Clients First. I just have a few housekeeping items before I go ahead and turn it over to Claudia. There is a built-in Q&A and chat feature. I'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask as we go. However, any technical questions will be directed to Claudia after she completes her demo session. We will also be recording the webinar, and you all will get a link to download the webinar via email. That email will also include information on how to request additional training, whether that's on queries or any other topics or questions you may have that we didn't cover in the webinar. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Claudia.
Thank you, David. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Thank you everyone for joining. I see some familiar faces, well, I should say some familiar names on our attendance list. So thank you for making time to join us today. We're going to be covering something really exciting, is how to write a basic query in HANA for customers that are running HANA. And today's agenda includes why we need queries. Essentially, what are the various reasons why anybody would need to create queries and the uses in SAP. Also basic database structure review, just to understand the relationships in the backend, table structure, parent keys, and parent and child table relationships. And after building that foundation, we'll actually get to creating a query. And at the very end, we can answer some of the questions that you might have throughout. So please make sure to comment your questions so that we can address them at the very end. Okay. Okay, so why would anyone want to create a query, right? That's the first question. Where can we use them? How are they useful? So one of the many reasons why we want to create queries is that sometimes the out-of-the-box reports in SAP gives us data that we may want to see differently. So, for instance, anybody running a P&L report, a balance sheet, sales analysis, purchasing analysis, you can see that the way the data displays is fairly static. What I mean by that is that we cannot change the way that the report, we cannot update, right, the way the report gives us that data. So when we run into situations where, okay, I need the information slightly differently, we need a few more pieces of information, or we want to see it in a different way, then we can actually recreate the report by creating a query, right? Or we have the need to, see some data, and none of the out-of-the-box reports have helped us with that kind of request. So in that particular case, then you would be creating a query from scratch, right? So that's one of the many problems, or one of the problems that query writing solves, right? Or the query solves. Second is queries can actually help us set up some conditions for alerts and approvals. So for example, if I go to alerts management, SAP gives you a number of out-of-the-box alerts that you can simply activate by clicking active, right? And then you say, who does this alert go to? Well, when we have an additional request that's not in the out-of-the-box alerts that we want to, use in order to alert some users is, well, I want to, notify someone of when a customer reaches a balance of, $30,000, right? So for that, what we can do is we can add, name our alert, and we can open, right, a saved query. Looks like we have a few under alerts. Anyone that's 90 days past due selected, and then I can see, or select who this alert goes to. So that's another way that queries help us. just to address those scenarios, right? Where we want to use it to alert SAP users. The other place where queries are helpful is using the MIM approvals. So if you can see here, let's say I pick, okay, we have a scenario here, AP invoice over $250, right? We have some originators, which means, the users that are subject to approvals. It's an AP invoice that we want to include in the approval, and who is approving, right? Who this document is going to for approval. And under terms, we can use the out-of-the-box selections or filters, right? We can set up deviation from credit limit, gross profit percentage discount, and total document. In this case, AP invoice that are over $250. So for example, if we have the need to say any AP invoices that are over $250 and that are also with a freight of less than 20, because we know that generally that wouldn't be the case. So in that case, what I would do is I would update and check that, and then instead of saying total document 250, I would go ahead and select my query that will trigger the approval, right? To say any EP invoice over 250 and where freight is less than 20. So I would click OK, update, and then in that case, the approval will kick in when these conditions are met. So that's another way that queries help us. Additionally, we can create what we call a data set. What that means is just some raw data with a query, let's say a list of business partners, worth of balances, and open sales amount. And we can use those queries and actually go into pervasive analytics. And you will see that we will be able to select those queries to be the base of dashboards, KPIs, right? So if I go new dashboard and then select base data source, you can see that I have the same list that I get here from my query manager, right? Get over here too. So I've classified some queries to go into HANA dashboards, right? Let's go ahead and say inventory quantity, bin location. So you can see these are the items, right? On hand quantity, bin code, and warehouse code. Let's click OK. So now I can use the data that this query displays at count to tell me or to actually select that data in graphs. So let's say item 1, item code. And then I can use those queries to actually, build some really cool dashboards in SAP. Okay. Third is we can actually use queries in Crystal Report. So some of you may have had the need to have a Crystal Report created, right? That provides information in a very nicely designed way. Let's say, for example, the bank statement that we have here in SAP. Let's do bank reports. Let's do main reconciliation report. Yep, account code. Okay. So this is an example of Crystal Report, right? So your layouts may also be based on Crystal Reports. So when we create a Crystal Report, we have the option to also, say, give me this information this way, and then we build a Crystal Report based on a query per se. So that's where queries also, learning how to write a query would also help us. And then in a more advanced stage, somebody like us, for example, consultants who have more intricate requests of, creating some HANA views, for, let's say, a shipping integration, or altering the stored procedures in order to trigger, a red bar when adding a transaction. So in those cases, right, it's more of an advanced use of queries, but it's the same thing where you learn how to pull information out of the system and, work with those HANA objects. Okay, so next we are going to be reviewing some basic database structure and how the information is saved, because we are going to be learning later how to pull that information out of the system, right? So if I go to choose company, you can see that I have 3 companies available here, right? Those companies in the back end, if I go to HANA Studio essentially accesses the databases directly, right? And we can do some cool stuff here too. You can see that I have a list of catalogs. Catalog is really, your company database, right? So if you're using a test database, you would have an additional catalog for that test database. If you're using a separate company, in addition to your main company for a subsidiary or another entity, then you would have an additional catalog, right? So I'm going to access the company that we're logged into, this one right here, and I'm going to go to the object of tables, right? Tables is where the information is saved, right? In SAP, it's composed of a 4-letter word. And it just goes on and on and on until all the way to Z. And if I select a table, in this case I selected Business Partner Master Data, you can see that it's, a table. It's called a table because it's 2-dimensional representation of the fields that are available for that table and then the records that are being added to that table. So in this case, this is the Business Partner Master Data table, and I have a card code, a card name, a business partner type, a business partner group, right? Some address information, credit limit, all of that good stuff. And then each record that's underneath here is, that unique record for the business partner. So if I go to SAP Business 1, and look for this particular code. Let's go to Business 1. Samuel, Son and Company. Now, I have here, I'm looking at this information that is saved here in the database, right? Card type is supplier and group code, right? Is Coast. Okay, so let's look at this Business Partner Master Data table. If you go to View System Information, this will allow you to display database information regarding the field that you're hovering over. So for example, if you pay attention closely to this area right here, while I'll hover over vendor code, you can see that there is a phrase or a word called OCRD, and then there's a comma, and then the word card code. So OCRD refers to the table name where this field is saved, right? Card code refers to the field name. If I go to now name, you can see that the name of the business partner is also saved in OCRD table, but the field that this corresponds to, it's card name. If I go to foreign name, then we have a similar situation. Same table, OCRD, and then card F name. If I hover over group, then you can see that, right, this field is called group code, and so on and so forth. So if I hover over account balance, the same, right? In table OCRD and field balance. Now, what happens if I go to the addresses tab? Let's hover over address ID. Now you can see that instead of OCRD, the table now changes to CRD1 that address. Okay, the reason for that is that there is a parent-to-child relationship of, a header and then additional information saved in children or child tables. So there is a header table called OCRD because that's where the one record for Samuelson and Company will be saved, and then any additional information pertaining to addresses, because there can be more than one address, will be saved under a separate child table. So in order to explain this a little bit better, I've created an Excel spreadsheet, okay, that lists some of those details. So business partner master data, that's what we're looking at. Header table, as you can see, it's called OCRD, and then it starts with the letter O. Most header tables in SAP have that nomenclature. O and then 3 letters, right? In this case, I'd imagine CRD is for card, right? Address table, it's one of the many children tables to this header parent. And as you can see, it takes the last 3 letters of the header table and then it adds a number or another letter perhaps that just says, okay, this is the way that I'm going to know that CRD is related to my OCRD table, right? Look, CRD1. Okay, so how are these two tables linked together, right? They are linked together by what is called a parent key. So a parent key is a unique identifier. As you know, you cannot add a business partner with the same code that's already been used, right? So, in that case, CRD, all of the codes that are assigned to the business partners are unique in the way that they cannot be used twice. So in that case, CRD, I have this card code, B01001, that's assigned to Samuelson and Company. And if I look at the addresses table, you can see that here it's a parent key that's connected to OCRD parent key. And it has some details about the addresses, right? So let's go ahead and add that address here. I'm going to say department, street, let's say update. And then let's add an additional one. I'm going to say department 2. Let's do update. Okay, so now I have those 2 records. So if I go back to my Excel spreadsheet, you will see that I will have something like this. Address type, B as in bill 2. Okay, and then address name is actually the unique identifier for this particular record. So you will notice that I won't be able to add another address with the same name. Let's just give it a try. The system tells me the entry already exists. So that's the way that SAP flags those records as unique. And the way that these 2 tables are connected are via the parent key, right? So okay, so that's the parent and child relationships. Now, let's go back to SAP. And now, let's take a look at Query Generator. Okay? So I'm going to go to Tools, Queries, Query Generator. Okay? So Query Generator in SAP is a tool, very basic tool, that allows us to write queries in a very simple manner, right? It doesn't require the user to have a lot of knowledge about the syntax. of how to, write queries and how tables are joined, etc. So in this case, you will learn that first I'm going to select my table name. So I'm going to actually type OCRD. And what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to try to pull a list of business partners with their address information, okay? So let's go ahead and do tab now. Okay, so now Query Generator displays some of the fields that I can select from this table. So that's very helpful, right? I can just, the description gives me a lot of information. This is the BP code, name. So I may not need to reference that, this table all the time, hovering over and things like that. I can just go by looking at the field names. So let's go ahead and select BP code, BP name, BP type. We'll learn what that is. Let's select balance, account balance. And these are the fields that I want to pull from my header table. Those are the ones that I want, okay? You can see that, the system says select these fields, right? Then I have a box that says from my table OCRD, which is my business partner master data table. And I have additional boxes that I will get into in just a little bit. Okay, so next I have the address table that I want to select from. So I'm going to put in CRD1 tab. Okay, so now you can see that in the from box, SAP has actually joined those two tables, right? OCRD, select from OCRD, inner join CRD1 on card code and card code. So like I mentioned earlier, right? Parent key, it's also card code. And then here, card code as well. So this actually should be like this. So SAP or Query Generator has done that for me already. So I don't even need to worry about joining them, right? Okay. Now, why do I want to select from the address table? Okay, I want to select address name. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my business partner data window, and I am going to hover over, the fields that I actually want to pull from. So I want to pull from street, and I want city, zip code, and I want a state, and country. Okay. All right. So, okay, now that I've selected that, an additional piece of information that I want to see too is what kind of type of address is this? Is this a billing or is this a shipping? So if I go to address type right here, that's going to tell me some other information. Okay. So now that I know what I want to select from these tables, let's go ahead and click execute. Okay, very easy, right? So now I have the list of all BPs in my database or in my company. Code, name, type, account balance, and address information. Now let's say that I only want to look at vendor information, right? So in this case, I will make use of the where area. So where, then we can add here some conditions, right? Where the following applies. Okay, so where, and I want to say customer type equals, S for supplier. Now, I already knew this, but if you don't know this yet, what you can do is you can look at BP type, right? That corresponds to card type. You can see the values for each, right? S is for supplier, and it's assigned to a vendor, and C is for a customer. So that's where I gather it from. So I'm going to say where card type equals, and that's the syntax for where it equals S. So I'll do execute. And now we can see that our customers have been filtered out, and I'm only left with vendor values. Okay, so now I can look at, okay, BP code, same company, looks like there are two records because there are two addresses linked to it, right? Billing department 1, billing department 2. And I see the rest of my vendors as well. Okay, so now that we've reviewed some basic information or a simple example, right, of how to pull data from Business Partner Master data window, then now we can perhaps go into a more slightly advanced query, not so advanced. So let's actually go ahead and try to create a query that gives us some sales information, okay, for a particular item, and we are going to do some date selection, for instance, for this year only. So I'll go ahead and do, before I exit, let's actually save as. You have the option of save any queries that you've created under, let's say, general in this case, and I'm going to name it list of vendors with address information. Okay, let's click save. So now if I close all the windows, I don't want to save changes, and I go now to Query Manager, this icon up here, and then go to the general subcategory, you can see that I have my query right here. So I select it, I can either double click or click OK, and then the results display. Okay. All right, so next we are going to go ahead and dive into our new query. Okay. So first of all, what are the relevant tables that I need to pull from? In this case, I'll go to sales order. Okay, so from here, I'm going to hover over the fields. In this case, customer, oh, it looks like this was relabeled. Okay, code, name, date. Okay, so you could see that the table name here is ORDR, right? Header table. And then if I hover over my item, the item area, then I could see that then the child table for the list of items is RDR1. Okay, so I'll go to query generator, type ORDR, and then RDR1. Okay, so what do I want from these tables? I would like to pull some customer information, and I want to look at item and the total sales for that line item. So I'm gonna select line total, and let's just see what this looks like. And click execute. Okay, so I can already see that this is not the way that I want to see the data. For one, I would like to see a summary or a sum of the row total, right, per customer. So in this case, we have this many rows because there are multiple items. And also, I am only interested in seeing data for A00001. I don't care about the rest of the items. So how can we change that, right? So first of all, I'm going to go to my select statement, and I'm going to say sum. This is the syntax, and I actually have to relabel this as sales. Okay, and anytime that we do a summation, we actually have to group by the rest of the columns in the select statement. So I'm going to actually copy that and paste that over here. And in addition to that, I want to do a filter for item, right? So in this case, I'm going to select again item code. Actually, let's do description. It'll be a little bit more helpful. And I'm going to press this button here called conditions. So conditions mean where, what kind of comparison do you want to give us, right? So I'm going to say description equals, and then I'm going to select the first variable here on our list. And you now will notice that when I execute, this little variable actually prompts a box, right, for that particular field, item service description equals, and then I want, let's say I'm going to select Belkin Travel Hub, click OK. All right. So now I have a list, right? The list is closer to what I want it to be, right? It's summarized by customer, and it's only relevant for that item that I selected. Now, this is from the beginning of time, right? Earlier I mentioned that I want to see only data for this year. And also I can tell that the way that these are sorted is a little bit out of order. So let's go ahead and update that. So first of all, I like to sort by, and then I'm going to look at cart code. And then additionally, I'm going to add another where clause that looks at the date. So now I'll select where posting date, right, is bigger than or equal to, and I can select also another variable, or I can hard code the date. Most of the time though, I do see that variables are a little bit better because then you can manipulate the date range selection. And I'm gonna say end of date is less than or equal to, and let's select number 2 here. Okay, so once I do execute, I can now select my Belkin Travel Hub, and then where posting date is bigger than or equal to the beginning of the year up until today. Okay. There's no data for this year because data we have here is a little bit outdated. So let's go ahead and do 2006 until the end of 2006. So let's do OK. And also we don't have any data there. Well, let's see. Travel Hub. Let's just do since the beginning of 2006 up until today. Okay, so that data may be scattered through, 10 years ago. So let's just, at least we could see that. Item, built import hub, and then we are just going to look at anything that's been added since 2012 until today. Okay, we still don't have any data there. Let's do it again. 2008 looks like we're gonna have to do. All right, so it looks like some of our data there is from 2008. Okay, so now I can see that my customer code is actually sorted correctly, and then I only see information relevant to this item, and then total sales right, correspond to my date range selection. So now that I have that, I can go and say as, and I can create a sales category. I can say total sales by customer with item and date range selection. Okay,